Since we already know how to evaluate one-sided limits graphically, let's move on to evaluating one-sided limits analytically. So, paano naman kung hindi na siya graph? Titignan lang natin and we will solve yung value ng limits natin. Let's consider this example. So, q of x is equal to 2x minus 1 whenever x is less than 0 and x plus 1 whenever x is greater than or equal to 0. So, we want to find A, the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the left, and B, the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the right. So let's first solve letter A, the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the left. Since we are determining the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the left, we will consider the value of the function for x less than 0. And that is this function here. Kasi ito yung x is less than 0. So ito ang gagamitin natin. So if we rewrite that, that is now equal to the limit of 2x minus 1 as x approaches 0 from the left. Observe that 2x minus 1 is a polynomial, therefore we can use direct substitution here. So this becomes now 2 times 0 minus 1. So we have 0 minus 1 or equal to negative 1. Therefore, the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the left is negative 1. For letter B, since we are looking for the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the right, we will consider the value of the function for x greater than 0. So, ito ang gagamitin natin, x plus 1. Kasi ito yung values where x is greater than 0. So, this becomes now the limit of x plus 1 as x approaches 0 from the right. Since this is a polynomial function, pwede na nating mag-substitute. So, we have 0 plus 1 equals 1. Therefore, the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the right is equal to 1. So, let's consider this function, g of x is equal to x squared minus 3 whenever x is less than or equal to 2. And negative 2 times the quantity x minus 2 squared plus 1 whenever x is greater than 2. And we wish to find the limit of g of x as x approaches 2 from the right and the limit of g of x as x approaches 2 from the left. So let's solve first letter A. Since we are determining the limit of g of x as x approaches 2 from the right, so we will consider yung value or yung value ng function as x is greater than 2. So, eto yon. We have negative 2 times the quantity x minus 2 squared plus 1. So, this becomes the limit of negative 2 times x minus 2 squared plus 1 as x approaches 2 from the right. Since this is a polynomial function, so we can directly substitute the value of 2. So we have negative 2 times 2 minus 2 squared plus 1. So we have now negative 2 times 0 plus 1. So the answer is positive 1. For letter B, we will consider the value of the function whenever x is less than 2. Kasi hinahanap natin yung 2 from the left. So we will use this. So we have the limit of x squared minus 3 as x approaches 2 from the left. So since this is a polynomial function, so pwede na nating ipasok na lang yung value ng 2. So we have 2 squared minus 3, or that is 4 minus 3 equal to 1. Now, going back to our two previous examples, nakita natin that the limit of q of x as x approaches 0 from the left is negative 1, at yung limit ng q of x as x approaches 0 from the right is 1. Notice that the limit from the left and the limit from the right are not equal. But in our second example, the limit of g of x as x approaches 2 from the right is equal to 1, and the limit of g of x as x approaches 2 from the left is equal to 1. And the two limits are equal. Actually, this tells us that if the limit from the left and from the right of a function are equal, then the limit of that function is equal to whatever the limit is. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, dito sa example 1 natin, since yung limit niya from the left is negative 1 at yung limit from the right is 1, so hindi sila equal. So, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na yung limit ng q of x natin as x approaches 0 is equal to kung ano man sa kanila. However, dito sa example number 2 natin, since the limit of g of x from the right of 2 at from the left of 2 are equal, then we say that the limit of g of x as x approaches 2 is equal to 1. So you see now the connection of one-sided limits to that of the two-sided limits. Okay? Two-sided limits yung wala tayong symbol sa taas, one-sided yung mga meron. Therefore, masasabi natin that the two-sided limit exists and is equal to L if the left and the right limits are equal and both exist. So we state now our theorem 1 that the limit of f of x as x approaches a is equal to L if and only if the limit of f of x as x approaches a from the left is equal to the limit of f of x as x approaches a from the right, which is equal to L. Ibig sabihin nito, basta yung left and right limits exist and they are equal to the same number L, then we say that the two-sided limit is actually equal to L. So let's consider h of x equals 3x plus 2 as x approaches negative 1 and negative of the quantity 2x plus 7 over 5 if x is less than negative 1. We wish to find now the limit of h of x as x approaches negative 1. So in this case, walang nakalagay kung left or right. But we are looking for the two-sided limit. So what shall we do? So we have to find the one-sided limits at tignan natin kung equal nga ba sila. At kung equal sila, yun na din ang limit ng h of x natin as x approaches negative 1. So first, we will find the limit of h of x as x approaches negative 1 from the left. And what is that? Gagamitin natin yung etong function na to. Kasi ito yung less than negative 1. So we have limit of the negative of 2x plus 7 all over 5 as x approaches negative 1 from the left. Since this is a rational function at hindi naman magzi-zero yung nasa baba, so we can directly substitute. So we now have negative of 2 times negative 1 plus 7 all over 5. So that is equal to negative 1. Ngayon, tignan naman natin yung limit ng h of x natin as x approaches negative 1 from the right. So gamitin naman natin ito dahil ito yung values ng x greater than negative 1. So we have the limit of 3x plus 2 as x approaches negative 1 from the right. Since this is a polynomial function, so pwede lang nating i-substitute si value ng x. So we have 3 times negative 1 plus 2 is equal to negative 1. Now we've shown that the limit of h of x as x approaches negative 1 from the left is negative 1, and the limit of h of x as x approaches negative 1 from the right is also negative 1. Therefore, by theorem 1, since both exist and both are equal to 1, then the limit of h of x as x approaches negative 1 is actually equal to negative 1. So this is by theorem 1. Now let's consider this function. J of x equals x cubed minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 1 whenever x is greater than 1. 1 whenever x is equal to 1. And negative 2 times the quantity x minus 1 squared as x is less than 1. So we wish to find the limit of j of x as x approaches 1. Again, this is a two-sided limit. Therefore, to find the value of this or to evaluate this, we have to find the limit from the left and from the right of 1. So we consider first the values from the left of 1. So we find the limit of j of x as x approaches 1 from the left, which is equal to eto. Kasi eto yung less than. So we have the limit of negative 2 x minus 1 squared as x approaches 1 from the left. Since polynomial to, pwede lang nating ipasok. So we have negative 2 times 1 minus 1 squared, or that is equal to 0. Now, for the second part, we will show that the limit of j of x as x approaches 1 from the right. So, this is equal to the limit of, eto naman ang gagamitin natin. So, we have x cubed minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 1 as x approaches 1 from the right. Since this is a polynomial function, so we can actually substitute. We have 1 cubed minus 2 times 1 squared plus 4 times 1 minus 1, which is equal to 2. Observe that the limit of j of x as x approaches 1 from the left is not equal to the limit of j of x as x approaches 1 to the right. Therefore, the limit of j of x as x approaches 1, we say that this limit does not exist. Kasi magkaiba sila eh. Okay? Or DNE. Now, let's consider this function m of x is equal to 2x raised to 4 minus 3x cubed whenever x is greater than 0. And 3x raised to 4 plus x cubed minus 2x squared whenever x is less than or equal to 0. And we wish to find the limit of m of x as x approaches 0. Again, this is a two-sided limit, so we consider the one-sided limits from the left and from the right. So if we find the limit of m of x as x approaches 0 from the left, so itong gagamitin natin kasi ito yung less than 0. So we have the limit of 3x raised to 4 plus x cubed minus 2x squared as x approaches 0 from the left. Since this is a polynomial, so pwede lang nating ipasok. Okay? 3 times 0 plus 0 cubed minus 2 times 0. So this is equal to 0. For the second part, the limit of m of x as x approaches 0 from the right is equal to, so gamitin naman natin ito kasi ito yung values ng x na greater than 0. So we have the limit of 2x raised to 4 minus 3x cubed as x approaches 0 from the right. So since polynomial to, pwede lang nating i-substitute. So 2 times 0 minus 3 times 0, this is equal to 0. Observe that both limits are equal to 0. So by theorem 1, the limit of m of x as x approaches 0 is actually equal to 0. So in summary, kapag yung limit ng f of x as x approaches a from the left ay equal kay limit ng f of x as x approaches a from the right, so let's say L ito, then ibig sabihin nito that the limit of f of x as x approaches a, the two-sided limit, is actually equal to L. Otherwise, kung hindi sila equal, then the limit of f of x as x approaches a does not exist.